It's been 18 years since Jay and Silent Bob struck back, and now the View Askew potheads are back in an all-new adventure titled simply Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, to capitalize on writer-director Kevin Smith's newfound passion for all the things that helped make him, well, Kevin Smith. And that's not a bad thing at all. Even if it plays like a low-rent nostalgia fest, it's still gut-busting hilarious, and the sheer amount of references, both View Askew and movies in general, is a smorgasbord of clever, random, cheap, and raunchy. In sum, this is a stupid movie, and I loved it. How you feel about it will ultimately depend on a few different factors, most notably your affinity for Smith and the View Askew catalog of films, as well as your general sense of humor. That said, I took my kid, who has only seen a few of Smith's flicks, and he loved it, so there you go. Smith has been very open about his heart attack nearly 2 years ago, and how it's changed him, both figuratively and literally, as he's no longer too fat to fly, as his once famous one-man show stated. Jay and Silent Bob Reboot effectively toes the line between shock raunch jokes that can be hit or miss, and heartfelt sentiment that can be either genuine or saccharine. It's a more grown-up Kevin Smith film, but by no means is he trying to move away from what makes a film like this appealing. No, this simply represents the product of a man that started making movies with a script and credit cards, and has traveled a long road of ups and downs and wild detours to get where he is now. Smith, in all his earnestness, has made a film that represents a culmination of that journey. And really, why wouldn't it be a Jay and Silent Bob movie? No one is expecting Kevin Smith to make Citizen Kane here. It's not exceptionally well shot or well paced, and oftentimes it can get into plotting territory, but those are typically par for the course with his films. We know what we're getting, for the most part, and it's always a heavy dose of buddy movie misadventures that often meander into more sobering territory where Smith can talk to the audience in a more straightforward and emotional way. Sometimes that misfires or goes over the top, and sometimes it hits like a dull thud, and sometimes it reaches to the core of what moves us. Yes, I'm still talking about Kevin Smith movies. Because disguised underneath all the weed, dick, fart, sex, and more weed jokes is a message. Sometimes it's about God, sometimes it's about religion, sometimes it's about family, sometimes it's about friends, sometimes it's about work, sometimes it's about a guy that wants to turn a man into his pet walrus. Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is, essentially, about growing up, getting older, and embracing your legacy. Also with weed, dick, fart, and sex jokes. The story is quite simple here, which finds Jay, Jason Mewes, and Silent Bob, Kevin Smith, traveling back to Hollywood to stop a reboot of Bluntman and Chronic from happening. The how and why of it doesn't matter all that much, as they pick up a new and diverse group of fellow travelers, one of which happens to be the long-lost daughter of Jay, played, of course, by Harley Quinn Smith, daughter of Kevin. Now, before you get cold feet thinking this is another Yoga Hosers, rest assured that it's not. Harley ends up getting some rather fun and challenging scenes, which won't get her nominated for an Oscar, but certainly show potential where some may cry nepotism. I mean, if you're going to use that advantage, then you at least want to show you're worth it, and it felt like Harley gave more to her performance than one might expect here. With this and a small turn in Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood under her belt, perhaps she'll find more ways to distinguish herself moving forward. Smith double bills as himself and Silent Bob, which actually makes this his most chatty film in the View Askew universe, and it's a welcome shift. Smith echoes a kind of Tony Stark-esque presence when playing himself, while Silent Bob continues to be silent, although has discovered how to communicate with a smartphone. And of course, he gets a great monologue at one point, which some will get and some won't. Those that do will certainly have a good laugh, as I did, but it ultimately ends up being the perfect metaphor for the film itself, which is deeply rooted in the View Askew films, riddled with cameos of previous characters, actors, and guest stars that will leave your head spinning, as well as a bit shocked at how old many folks are looking. But that too is a great metaphor for the film. We all get old, but that doesn't count us out, and it doesn't discount the legacy we've built. For me, the best cameo from the film comes from Ben Affleck, who gets a bit of a spotlight scene with some meatier than expected dialogue that really ties things together and hits like an emotional hammer, especially for those that either A, have kids, B, love chasing Amy, or C, both, or D, just love the Batfleck, who was the bomb in Phantoms, yo! Ultimately, Jay and Silent Bob Reboot is a silly, stupid, hilarious, earnest, heartfelt, and nostalgic slice of fun, and yes, all of that will depend on how you feel about the filmography of Mr. Smith. But, like the movie shows, you're never too old to have a good laugh while revisiting some old friends, and although you may think it's not possible for Smith to tug on your heartstrings and eke out a tear or two, this reboot certainly makes a go of it. As comedy is so exceptionally subjective and this film is so clearly tied to a somewhat niche appeal, I can only grade it as a fully biased fan of Smith, even if some of his flicks never worked for me, while others touch my cinematic nerve. As a fully Kevin Smith, Jay and Silent Bob comedy with a hefty amount of laughs and heart, this View Askew flick rates among his better works, and cemented my resolve to happily revisit these wacky Jersey boys in another decade or so with pleasure. For that, I'm giving Jay and Silent Bob Reboot an 8 on 10. I'm Paul Shirey with JoBlo.com.
Your methods.
Let's do this.
Yay! It's Jay and Silent Bob.